DLL files and SO files on Linux and dylib files on Mac are bits of code that can be shared between different programming languages. These shared code files allow you to use functions, data variables, parameters, other things that are written in any given language and compiled to a DLL instead of to an executable, so you can access them with any programming language that can access DLL or other shared code files. Most of the files in the Windows operating system exist in the form of DLLs, and you can access those bits of the Windows operating system using the Windows API. If you know what functions are included in the actual Windows operating system, and you know which DLL files they're contained in, you can use a programming language to open those DLLs and run those functions. And there are many thousands of functions. All of the operations that you can complete with an operating system, and any programming task that isn't built in and natively possible in the Rebol language, you can make happen with those DLL files. And that's also true for Linux or Mac or any other operating system. If you use the native shared code files of those operating systems, you can do with your programming language anything that can be done in that operating system. And there are many low-level functions and specific little bits of control on the operating system that aren't included natively in Rebol that at some point you might want to control very finely in a program. Also, there are many thousands of third-party DLLs that have been created by programmers all over the world that let you do more powerful things, things that required a lot of programming to occur, and they expose certain functions that you can access at a very high level to do, for example, 3D programming or perhaps voice over IP program communications and database access. For example, one possibility may be if if a company creates a piece of robotic equipment and wants to provide programmatic access to controlling that equipment, they may create a DLL that's accessible by any programming language that can deal with DLLs. And they could, for example, create a function to, for example, move an arm, and make a very simple function that does quite a few things at the operating system level. But in order to be used, and to be used in any programming language that can access DLLs, you could control that robot by opening the DLL and using the move arm function, for example. So DLLs are very important in making programming tasks interoperable between different languages and in simplifying tasks for programmers. There are a number of DLLs that do useful things. A couple links here that provide some examples that we're going to use. In order to use DLLs in Rebol, the commercial version of Rebol that you purchase has access to DLLs. You can get that at the purchase link on the Rebol website. But to try them out in Windows, there is a downloadable program called Rebol. It's free. It's not created by the Rebol development team, so it's not supported by Rebol Technologies, but it's a good way to get started. It's functional. It'll work. There are some limitations, but for the most part, it's a good way to start programming with DLLs in Windows. Again, it's not supported by Rebol Technologies, so if you plan to do any commercial development, you should really look into getting the Rebol commercial versions. But to do this, what you do is go to that site and download the Rebol package. It has all these files. And what you need to do is, directions here in the Rebol package, but basically you need to run this set DLL program. You need to get your copy of rebol.exe and run this at the command line. You can either do that with a start and run command, or you can drop down to the DOS box and run that command line. What that will do is it will patch your Rebol interpreter so that it includes access to the Rebol DLL. and that will provide access to DLL functions. And for our first example, we're going to download this DLL, just a little example DLL that is on the website, same website as this tutorial. It's called pureexample.dll, and it's just a simple little DLL that will show us how to access it. And this is the code that was used to create this. This was created in another language completely. It was created in the pure basic programming language and was compiled. This is the actual code that was used to create it, and all it's going to do is print a little message, a little pure basic message. But again, it could have been any other code that pure basic is capable of. Pure basic is a great little programming language. It's great for doing cross-platform operating system work, and it's great for dealing with multimedia. It's very easy to use. But in order to use this code, you would have to have the pure basic compiler, know how to work with that compiler, and create an executable. Instead, if we create a DLL from it, we can use the functions that are in that DLL from any other operating system. You'll see we have a function here called do some stuff. It takes a couple parameters, and what we're going to do is use this patched version of Rebol that we've created using rebcall, and we've got some code, some straight Rebol code printing. This says this part of the program was written in Rebol. We print a new line, and then we get a couple integers from the user using the ask function. We get two random numbers, which we're calling A and B. And then this is the actual way we initiate the DLL. We're going to load that do some stuff function from the pure example DLL, and we're going to convert that function into a usable Rebol function. The way we do this is using this default code, do args, call the rebcall.r. That's one of the things that came in the rebcall download. And we load that library using the load-library function that's built into the rebcall code. We're assigning that the word lib, and then we're creating a Rebol function. And we're creating a Rebol function using the make routine function in Rebol. We're using those two variables, x and y, which are both going to be integers, and we're returning an integer from that. And we're doing that all from the lib do some stuff. Then what we're doing is we're going to run that newly created function, the thing we've called Rebol function, which is from the library, that do some stuff function, and we're passing it the A and B parameters, and that is going to be stored in the answer variable. So we've actually just instantiated that function, called it Rebol function, and we're actually using the do some stuff function from the pure example DLL. Again, you don't have to know how that was created. You just have to know the name of it and what parameters it takes. In this case, we're using x and y parameter arguments. Store that in the Rebol answer variable, and then we're printing the multiplication result calculated by pure DLL was the answer that we got. So this is actually going to take those two variables and multiply them together. That's what's happening in the DLL. We'll print a new line, and then we free that library, the library that we created, and we run and end the program.